welcome to the field portion of the Cashflow Field Training. And as you can see behind me, we have 3 buses here today. We have investors who are previewing a house that we are about 95% complete on. It is one that's available for purchase, like all of the deals. And the goal of this presentation and this portion is for them to see a house that we believe is rental grade. So the light fixtures, the paint finishes, the countertops, the type of cabinets, the flooring, and then the finishes across the board on the house. It's by no means perfect, but the goal is when you as an investor buy a house like this from us, that you're not going to see any repair bills for years. You're not going to have to put a new roof on this thing. You're not going to need siding or windows or furnace or hot water heater. We call those items capital improvements, and we've corrected all of the deferred maintenance on this house. It's rent ready, it's ready to go, and so it's to really help investors kick the tires and get a feel for what we think rental grade is and what we've done thousands of times. So let's go take a look. Okay.
She said that stuff is amazing.
So, how many of you saw the apartment complex at the top of the street? We bought that, I want to say about 5 or 6 years ago. We have a client, she's related to Beck, the singer. Her son is Giovanni Ribisi, the actor. She's a Hollywood type. We've been working with her for years. She owns that building. It was funny because an investor, that particular building, stripped it completely, gutted it to the studs, and then we bought it at the auction for really cheap, and that's been a good rental that we manage. Now, we have a house, this house right here, and then we have a house at 106, so just down the street. You know, you've heard talk about people changing neighborhoods. That's one of the things that we like to do. Whereas you can go in and every house that you can pick up gets rehabbed to the same quality, and then you're really impacting. Now, in a neighborhood like this, like I was mentioning earlier, it's still predominantly homeowner. So, you know, when we got off the bus, I still had the local neighbor from the homeowners police watch. What do they call it? The neighborhood watch. She was wanting to find out what was going on here. And I said, no, we were the ones who fixed this up. Now, if you look at your book, you'll see the tax record from this property. The tax assessed value alone on this deal is $67,000. That's what the city said it was worth last year before we fixed it up. You with me on that? So now imagine and look at everything that we've done in terms of siding and mechanicals and paint, etc. Okay, it's like a brand new house, and so we really think if you look at the comps, we'll be at the higher end of the comps. But I think you can see also that this is a rental grade rehab, not a homeowner grade. So what would be some of the differences that we would do if we were selling this to a homeowner? Brand new cabinets. So let's talk about that. Did you like the facelift that we gave the cabinets? Okay, we took all the doors off. We took the countertops, the sink, and the fixtures off. We painted all of the cabinets. Then we put the doors back on with brand new hardware, brand new knobs, put brand new countertop, brand new sink, brand new fixture in. And it looks fantastic, right? It's perfect for rental grade. Those cabinets are good to go for another 10, 15, 20. What's the biggest single thing that destroys cabinets? Water. That high now, I would say, now 100% of them get some kind of touch-up, but I would say as far as replacing them, if they're not water damaged, we're probably maybe 10% that we completely replace them altogether. Now, did you notice the laminate flooring that we put in? Whenever possible, we'll try to refinish hardwood floors, but if it looks like, especially in those main traffic areas, if it looks like it would cost too much to refinish them, then we'll put the laminate down. We try to stay away from carpet in the main traffic areas because if a tenant moves out after a year, it's just going to be new carpet again. Whereas a bedroom with carpet will go 2, 3, 4 years because you just don't have the traffic. Okay, little things like that. Did you notice that we poured some new steps, others we just patched, some we didn't do anything to. again, rental grade versus homeowner grade. It's a very common theme that you'll see. Questions about any of the rehab? I would say this house is about 95% done. There was a punch list that I saw yesterday of items that we're going to still address. So I heard there was some water in the basement, some little things like that. But any like big decisions that you're seeing that if you were the owner would trouble you. So she said, do we ever put dishwashers in them? You know, if there's a space for a dishwasher, if there's a dishwasher before, we'll swap them out. We have an appliance company. Those are used appliances. They'll put those in the house for about $500 and then warranty them for 6 months. Now think about what we've learned is that's for both appliances, delivery and installation. What we've learned is that if appliances are going to make it 6 months, they'll make it a few years. And it makes it so that even if down the road, let's say that stove goes out, I can get another stove put in there for $250. Most of the time, I'll just go ahead and replace the stove with another used one if it goes out a couple years from now. Because by the time you call a repairman and he comes out with his minimum, it's $100 just to go to the property, then it's $50 an hour, then it's parts and labor, you're gonna be over $250 anyway on a repair. So little things like that are system things that we've put together over the years. I definitely would say that even I have been victim to falling in love with one of my properties. It just happened a few years ago on a house that Brant's guys were fixing up for me. It's in a really cool part of town, and it had a nice gravel driveway. I called Brant. I said, "Let's put concrete. Let's do concrete. Let's do a better driveway." And he's like, "Why? We have gravel." And I said, "Oh, I just love that property. I would live in it." Okay. And then I say, you know, those basement windows, those are 1920 basement windows. Let's go ahead and put brand new ones in. He's like, none of them leak. I say, yeah, but you know, I would just feel better about it. I even put a picket fence in front of that stupid house. Okay? Investors and that emotion, we're our own worst enemy, and that happens all the time. I mean, if you look at the houses on this street, don't the houses have great bones architecturally? Okay, you have some craftsman homes, you got some really distinct styles. It's not just a box neighborhood. Now you saw how close we were to downtown. This is a very high appreciating neighborhood. We're seeing double-digit returns in this area. Part of which is because 5-10 years ago, this was a war zone over here. It was rough, but it's been transforming because now we're only a few blocks from $200,000 houses, and you see the comps that we put in the book. $775 is the rent rate, and you'll see the rent rate that we quote on these properties is probably $50 to $75 below fair market. Why would we do that? So it rents fast. Yep. I don't want a tenant to be in here for 2 years and then move across the street. We make it really hard for tenants to make a lateral move into another property in the same neighborhood. We want them to think, you know, I love this house and I've been here for a while, but where else am I going to go? Because every time a tenant moves out, you have to pay for, you know, carpet and paint usually. You lose a month's rent, and then you got to pay a leasing commission. It can cost you $1,500, $2,000 in between tenants. So one of the policies that I actually have on my properties is if you move into one of my houses, I will never raise the rent for as long as you live there. Now, I always get investors that say to me, what? I mean, why wouldn't you raise it 10% a year? Well, if I raise the rent $25 this year, that's an extra $300 that I make next year, right? But if my tenant says, I don't want to pay that $25, it could cost me up to $2,000 to get another tenant in there. It doesn't pencil. It's not worth the risk to me. You see that? Now think about, I saw some of you nodding your heads, think about it when you were a tenant, or maybe you still are. If your landlord would have said that to you, you would have been like, so I live here 10 years, and you won't raise the rent? Nope. I have a tenant, she's been living with me for 8 years now. If I would have had a tenant move out after the 12-month mark of our typical lease, even if I only would have spent $1,000 to turn that property over, I would be in the whole $8,000, right? In lost rent and costs. So in my mind, that she's been there that long, yeah, maybe I've lost out on some rent raises, but I've picked up an extra $10,000. Do you see the difference of experience versus what your gut may be? It's counterintuitive a lot of times, whereas we're just looking at the numbers and looking at what those actual turn costs in between tenants can be. So the rent is a little bit on the low side. I mean, this is a lot of house, and a garage for $775, right? This close to downtown, in this kind of homeowner neighborhood. It's a great street. You see a lot of pride of ownership. We actually had one yesterday. Did someone take the one at 106 South? Yes. Okay, so this one, the price on it was what, 67.5? 66.5, and which ironically is the tax value. There's definitely some equity in this house. There's some meat on the bones. But what's the return at the bottom of the document? It's a 10% deal. So what's ironic is if I was selling these homes based on equity, easily I could have sold this for a lot more. But we always work backwards to the return. We want turnkey houses that are fixed up and ready to go like this to be a 10% deal. The one down the street is a pre-rehab property. We're going to see one of those in a little bit. So the investor is going to buy it and then send me, I think that, what's the rehab on that one, Megan? Like 20, 30 grand? 20, they're going to send me the 25,000 and we're going to bring it up to this grade. Now we made the mistake a few years ago of taking investors to a pre-rehab house first. I think, Brant, that happened to you yesterday with a client. Maybe it was. So we want to take you to an after house first. That's why we came here, so you can really get a feel for what we think rental grade is. Now, if you decided to sell this to a homeowner in 5 years, what kind of changes would you make to the house? What would you spend additional money on? Granite on those countertops would be easy, or maybe new cabinets. What else? I'd do travertine or ceramic tile flooring. Yep. There's a lot of little things that could be done better, aren't there? But to get $775, we're good. What big bill am I going to have from this house in the next 10 years? Not roof, not siding, not windows, not mechanicals, not furnace, not hot water heater. All the big stuff's done from the city standpoint, from a tenant standpoint. And that means that you as the investor, the only volatility that you're going to experience is a tenant that moves out and what condition the home is in.
You didn't go into the crappy basement? New furnace and new hot water heater.
New furnace, new hot water heater, yep. And one of the things that we never finish basements in Indiana, because every basement in Indiana gets water in it at some point, and there's some water down there right now. We tell the tenants, look, that's a space that you can use, but if anything gets water on it and gets damaged, that's on you. It's just bonus. Think of it as a shed in the backyard. That's what your basement is for. We never spend the money. Now, I have a partner who does homes that are within 2 blocks of universities, and he'll go in and spend the $10,000 to make the basement dry and do the French drains and the wall. I've seen that done before, and that can make sense when you're renting by room. I mean, Becca's got a client who from New York, and we just rented a house to, it was basically the cross-country team, right, from IU? And so they're paying $2,200 a month. They're all on scholarship. In fact, their proof of income was their scholarships that they gave us. And we spent extra finishing the basement on that home because we knew that was a favorite area for college students. So sometimes that makes sense. Most of the time it doesn't.
So if you were going to do like an option to buy, right, would you let them know, like if you decide to buy it, we'll do some of these little things that you were talking about? You let them know that in advance?
So great question. He said, if it's an option to buy, would you let them know what things you'd be willing to do in advance? So if we're doing the 5 and 5 plan, like I was talking about earlier today, I use those things as a negotiating point. So maybe my tenant wants a dog. And when they convert to the buyer from me, they want a fenced yard in the back. And I'll say, all right, well, I'll spend $1,000 and put a fence in there for you, but we're going to add that onto the sales price. Or they say, no, I want this house to really shine cosmetically. So those become negotiating points that we can work out with them as we're moving forward when they become a buyer. One of the other big things is you'll see on some of our houses, for example, if I have a chain link fence in the backyard, I don't fix that because I'm leaving a little meat on the bone to negotiate with them. Because if it's fixed when they rent the house and then the fence falls down, they can call that in as a maintenance request to me, can't they? If it's not fixed and they move in, it was like that when you moved in. So if they ask me to fix it, then that becomes a negotiation. Do you see the difference? Versus an expectation, it was in this condition when I moved in. That's a big factor. Other questions? Okay, so yeah.
Does the tenant know that you're planning to do a 5 and 5 when they go in?
Every tenant we say to them, look, if this turns out to be a good relationship, We have investors that would love to be the bank for you on a house. It may be this house, it may not be this house, but we have that opportunity. We don't like to promise them this house because what if this house starts going up 25% a year? What if in 5 years you don't want to sell it yet? What if you want to just put another tenant in there? I don't want to lock you into a strategy based on how the market's going. But what if after the first tenant leaves, or like we were talking about this morning, what if before this tenant moves in, somebody says, I'll give you $90,000. And at the end of the day, it's your investment, and you have the flexibility after consulting with me about what to do with it and the best way to liquidate it.